Mitt Romney supports school vouchers, but some critics of vouchers say that they result in less accountability, at least at the federal level. Joining me next is Neal McCluskey of the Cato Institute to discuss this. Welcome, Neal.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. So the New York Times had a story this morning on Mitt Romney and school choice, and I was struck by the comments of one of the people quoted in this story, Margaret Spellings, the education secretary under George W. Bush. She's quoted as saying, "Vouchers and choice as the drivers of accountability, obviously that's untried and untested." Neal, what do you make of that remark?
Well, I mean, she's obviously been a big supporter of a lot of federal control. I mean, she was really probably the architect of No Child Left Behind. I think she's always been dubious about school choice, and to one extent, she's right. I mean, we haven't had universal school choice in this country, certainly in a long time, not in our memories, even though we did have it, well into the beginning of our history. So she can say, sure, we haven't had universal school choice. We don't know whether it'll work. The reality is we can look at markets almost everywhere else and see they work really well. And we can look at school choice where it exists and see that the schools are doing better. So what she said is, it's true in one sense, but most of the evidence, when you look beyond that immediate point, says school choice is the key to accountability.
But for the proponents of vouchers, and proponents of vouchers have long argued that that they have a beneficial effect not only on the kids who receive them, but on the kids who don't, who are left in the traditional public schools. What effects are those voucher proponents talking about? What is the evidence out there, given the places we have charters in this country, or I'm sorry, we have vouchers in this country?
Well, the best evidence is actually Romney cited it when he released his education platform, and he cited it comes from a researcher named David Figlio, and he found that schools that were public schools that were under immediate threat of losing students to private schools in Florida ended up doing better. So where we have school choice, we see that the accountability is working both for the schools being chosen, the private schools, and those that are under threat of losing them. But again, Margaret Spellings can say, well, we don't see that everywhere because we don't have choice everywhere. All we can say is where we have choice, it seems to provide that accountability.
What about her federal accountability point more broadly? I know you're no fan of No Child Left Behind, and I recall, though, writing many an editorial in the Bush years complaining that Margaret Spellings, who was in charge of enforcing the law, was not, in fact, enforcing many of the provisions. She was handing out waivers like lollipops so that states and districts didn't have to abide by certain provisions. So it seems to me that the federal government doesn't do a very good job of holding states and districts accountable. Yet she's complaining about the feds not having, or that power being diminished at the federal level. Is that a legitimate concern, Neal?
Yeah, well, you get the sense that she thinks, and many think, that if you just name a law, No Child Left Behind, that means it will happen because the federal government is big and mean and will make sure states stay in line. But the reality is they don't. And this is no better illustrated than the fact that the big wall that in No Child Left Behind was at 2014, there would be no excuse for any student not being proficient. And what we saw is what we should expect. Now the Obama administration, but really starting with waivers in the Bush administration, is saying, forget about that. No one's going to hit it. Let's do something else. And that's almost always what happens, not just the federal level, but with state standards and accountability, tough guy talk, but especially at the federal level. When push comes to shove, there's no more enforcement. So it's really a myth to think that No Child Left Behind was tough. And if you look at test scores, we had bigger increases in many periods before No Child Left Behind than after.